We have to show all of America, and we have to show these kids what all of America looks like, and that each one of the children that is watching this it understands that they're an important part of America, that they make up what this country is and what's great about this country.
I have nothing else to add to that. That's so eloquently and perfectly put.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. 2026 marks the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the foundation of an American popular culture mosaic. This is the Everything's a Primary Source podcast, the show dedicated to learning history through pop culture. I'm your host, Eric Salmonson. As part of the America at 250 public history road trip, I traveled across the country collecting stories, each one a piece of that mosaic, connecting personal experience to the media, people, and places that shape our lives. This season brings those stories together because pop culture, at its core, unites us. Everything as a Primary Source is, therefore, a way to understand your history, my history, our history through popular culture. Kay is joining me here at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago, but you're not from Chicago.
No, I'm from St. Paul.
And so how long did you drive here?
We took the train. We took the Empire Builder from St. Paul.
That's a great name for a train.
I know, yeah. Trains have the best names.
They really do, because they like Santa Fe line or like the Eagles, like they always incorporate like these great names.
Well, we're taking the Borealis train home, so
that's not as
okay. I guess the Empire Builder is a little more dramatic.
Yeah, that's what you want is to know you're part of something big, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, because it starts in Seattle, I think. Ends in the line starts in Seattle, ends in Chicago.
It's interesting that you would have something like that not coming from New York, because New York is always, it's the Empire State, right?
Yeah.
And you would think that they would kind of take claim of anything imperial related in the name. They'd want that.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called the Empire Builder, but it's been there for a while.
So you're just visiting Chicago and enjoying the sights, and this museum drew you here?
Well, we've heard, because my husband is a fan of Svengoolie, so we heard that there was a Svengoolie exhibit here. So that's what made us initially come here, but also then we found out there's like the late night exhibit and things like that. So
Svengoolie kind of fits into that late night. I mean, he's not late night, but I mean, that's kind of his realm is, kind of B horror movie type stuff. Right. So I kind of pitched it briefly to you, but I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New Hampshire, and in the week leading up to the 4th of July, I have this podcast that I do, and I decided to make it all about America at 250 and using, as I always do on this podcast, pop culture as a way to learn about different time periods, especially from whence the pop culture artifact comes from. And so we use that as a way to be like, well, what was the society and culture like at that time? What does it say about the people? And adding another layer on top of that, how can we relate it back to the founding of the United States? So a lot to do, and so get ready for another 45-minute conversation.
Okay, but I'll settle in.
Sesame Street was your choice, right? And that, like a lot of shows, it was on for a long time. So when it comes to television, there's a certain point where, yes, it's a product of its times, but then it starts to inform the culture too, right? And Sesame Street is definitely one of those shows where that was the purpose of it, was to inform the population. So were you a lifelong Sesame Street viewer? Yeah,
it premiered pretty close to my first birthday. So I've been watching it my whole life. I even watched it, when I was in college, my college roommate and I would watch it because we got home. It was broadcast in the morning, but then it was also broadcast in the afternoon, kind of like after school kind of time frame. So my college roommate and I would, if we were there in time, we would watch it after class. And in fact, I think during one of the pledge drives, there was a statistic that something like 5% of all Sesame Street viewers were adults without children.
It has entertainment qualities to it for everybody. It's not just for
Right.
kids.
Yeah,
It's like they found that recipe pretty quickly of how to educate without boring kids, how to, and not in a ridiculous way. They diversified what they were presenting. It wasn't all puppets all the time. They had cartoons. They had
Yeah, they had those great films, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and all that
11,
stuff.
12.
Right?
Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun.
I mean, everyone. Yeah, you just start that, and anyone who's Gen X basically will be able
Yeah.
to finish that song.
Were you a Mr. Rogers person too? Did you?
It was, yes.
So it was always
Oh, yeah.
Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers.
And the Electric Company.
And the Electric
Yeah,
Company.
that was the trifecta.
And today's special, that was when I was a kid. They came out with
okay.
that show. The mannequin, I think that was on PBS. The mannequin
Yeah.
that came to life with his hat.
Oh, I don't know that one. There's also Zoom.
Yeah, the Zoom Kids. I
So,
remember hearing about that. And that was a whole block of children's, but it wasn't, I don't know, they didn't have like that veneer on it that so many children's programming in the 90s onwards had on it. It was like, yes, this
Yeah.
show is for kids, but we're being very straight with them.
Yeah, well, all those shows were right on the forefront of using television to educate children. And I mean, I guess especially since it was public television, because there was that time when children's programming became about selling products.
Yeah.
In like the 80s, there were kids program. There was always public television, but then more children's programming that started on like commercial television, and then those things kind of ended up just being there to sell things.
Yeah, there was like a lot of the commercial stuff. I mean, the 80s was, all those TV shows are essentially
Yeah,
22-minute long
a lot of them
commercials.
were.
Yeah.
And then there was legislation to keep that from happening and make children's programming purely educational. I think the PBS programs never really lost that initial, since they don't have to try and sell anything. Even today, though, the kids programming, I think, on PBS still has a lot of that same spirit as the shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and Electric Company and Zoom.
Yeah, they do have a legacy, especially PBS. I mean, they try to keep that alive because the standard was set then. They did such a nice job. So we're talking for Sesame Street, late 60s, early 70s, right? When that premiered.
1969.
And set the tone. I mean, when you think PBS, you think Big Bird. You don't.
Right.
It's just like they kind of go hand in hand. And I mean, that was entering into, it was coming out of a very tumultuous time in American history and
Right.
entering into one that's not universally known for its optimism, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they did a nice job of, do you feel as a viewer of that from a young age that it equipped you pretty well with the next step in life? Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing about Sesame Street, well, I feel like Sesame Street, when it first started too, it was almost, it had that urban setting. It was almost kind of gritty. It wasn't like bright colors and flashy
farm,
things
yeah.
and a lot of fantasy, which isn't a bad thing, but it was sort of like, this is real life. These are like real people, quote unquote. These are real characters, real people that like could live in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing some of I got DVDs for my kids so they could watch kind of the old episodes. And you can kind of see how they were trying to branch out a little bit and incorporate not just sort of an urban setting, but also more like there were films about like an Appalachian postman, for example, and things that trying to incorporate kids from all over the country.
Yeah.
But I do think all those kind of shows, at least for people of my generation, like we all have memories of things that we've learned or just feelings that we had when we were watching those shows that really have stuck with us.
Yeah. I remember watching, they had back-to-back. It was the documentary about Fred Rogers and then the movie with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. And both of those, especially the documentary, made me emotional in certain parts.
Oh
because
gosh, yeah.
remember,
I can't watch Mr. Rogers. Like, I couldn't watch that documentary because I know I would just cry through the whole thing. But, you talked about a tumultuous time. And I think those, especially Mr. Rogers, was not afraid to talk about those things on the show. So he wasn't afraid to address those things in ways that kids could understand.
Yeah, and he said it, and maybe it's more the Tom Hanks version of him, but he said, one of the most important things about working with kids is remembering what it was like to be a kid. And therefore you can relate to them better because you're not talking to them as an adult. You're understanding that they haven't had all the experiences. They don't know. And so if you remember what it was like to be confused and to not really have it all worked out, then you can understand a little bit more how to educate properly or to expose them to things.
The kids know that they might not know what's happening in the world, but they'll know if it is a tumultuous time, they'll feel it. And I think that's something that I feel like a lot of kids programming today is a little more sugarcoating. Like, they're not, like, I really can't, maybe I'm missing something, but I can't think of a show that's that's on currently that necessarily addresses how kids are dealing with the times today. There are shows like Daniel's Tiger kind of carries that spirit of Mr. Rogers, and they'll talk about like things that scare children, like if your parents leave you with a babysitter for a while or leave you at school, that they'll come back. But I really can't think of anything that deals with sort of like current events and how kids are relating to current events and how to help them deal with current events. Maybe there is one, but
Sesame Street, and I
haven't seen it in a while. Maybe they're the only ones.
They might. I mean, I haven't. And it was funny because my son, he's 11 now.
Oh,
but,
okay.
When he was younger, I think I tried to show him some Sesame Street, but he just didn't hook into it because there's such a huge assortment of things to choose from.
Right, there is a lot.
When we were kids, it was like it was one of like 5 channels that you could choose from, and it was the only one that really had, for extended periods of time, lots of educational, kid-friendly shows, and so I know that they must have addressed that stuff but I don't think they ever did it as straightforward, like looking into the camera. I could be wrong. I'm sure somebody, especially here in the Museum of Broadcast Communications, will be like, well, actually, in season 3. But I know that they've introduced characters that are like bilingual, or kind of introducing that to kids, and their little segments. They would talk about stuff somewhat broadly, but they would do it right. They would address it. I think another thing that shows itself from the time is late 60s. We're coming out of the Great Society, right? With President Johnson's, it was another progressive era where things like, what's the preschool program? Shoot, I totally forgot it right now. It'll come back.
From the 60s?
Yeah.
Something like Captain
Head Start.
Kangaroo.
Head Start.
Oh, that. Okay.
So the Head Start program.
Okay. Head Start.
Yeah, I should have said program in the Museum of TV.
No, I mean I get what you're saying now.
Yeah, the Head Start was brought up then for low-income families to have preschool options. But even then, I mean, you just said it. How many kids have been educated in a good way, by television? Right? Because, and I would watch Sesame Street when I was in preschool. So I did have a preschool I would go to, but where I went to school, we only had half-day kindergarten. So by the time I got to kindergarten,
yeah, me too.
I would watch. I think I must have watched the afternoon one if I had morning kindergarten, because they switched us halfway through the year.
Right.
So the first part of the year I was in the morning, and then the second part of the year I was in the afternoon.
Oh, interesting.
And so I watched as part of my repertoire of shows, and I did watch Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right, but I also did watch some Sesame Street, and so I learned my letters. It supplemented what I was getting, and maybe for some kids that was the only education that they would get. And public television is a good place for that to land in. And I remember the Children's Television Workshop. Remember, that was the name of their when they introduced the show.
Yeah, and you probably still hear all the little jingles in your head too from all those. Yeah, well, yeah, because I feel like I still remember things from shows like The Electric Company when it comes to grammar. Like I'll still sometimes have things in my head like like how to spell things just from some of those, some of those films that they had on that.
I think they had the recipe, like I said earlier. They had it right back then in the 70s and the early 80s.
Support for this episode comes from iCivics. As we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation, iCivics is looking ahead to see how we'll bring that history to life in the classroom this fall. As you plan your upcoming curriculum, put Investigation Declaration at the top of your list. In this new game from iCivics, middle and high school students don't just read about 1776, they live it as Secret Agent 6. Their mission? To stop the global crime ring BARF, the baddies against rights and freedom, from erasing the foundations of our democracy. It's the perfect way to turn this 250th milestone into a season of discovery. Give your students a deeper understanding of natural rights and the social contract on their own terms. Get a head start on your best school year yet. Explore Investigation Declaration now at bit.ly/Investigation Declaration. That's bit.ly/Investigation Declaration.
I'm trying to connect everything I can in a reasonable way on this particular season to the founding of the country, Declaration of Independence, and sort of I'm treating that as the origin spot of our popular culture. And as you go into the 70s, as not great as a lot of the things may have been back then, it was the bicentennial era.
Yeah.
And so there was that spirit of reflection, just like we're here now in the semi-sesquicentennial era, of like, who are we, right? Where are we going? Where have we been? And how does that inform where we're going? Do you get a sense that children's programming at that time was trying to, in its own way, present those very American ideals?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think the idea of freedom for all was in those shows. Just the diversity of Sesame Street, just the different and the diversity of like the Electric Company. Those shows, they come out of, like, for example, the Civil Rights Movement, and our nation is really focused on making sure that we adhere to that idea of freedom for all, and that the pursuit of happiness in this country is available to everyone, no matter what color you are, no matter what, whether you're rich or poor, whatever. That's one of the founding principles of this nation, is that everyone's equal. It is a free country. And that's something I see a lot in those shows like Sesame Street and Electric Company. It's not that it's overt. Like, they don't have, for example, a segment where they're like, "Here, kids, this is what diversity looks like, and this is what prejudice looks like, and this is what discrimination looks like, and that's bad." It's just by displaying themselves as a slice of America, and the different aspects of every part of the country, that's something that this is what our nation is about. Is the community everyone being equal, everyone having freedom, no matter where you're from, no matter what color you are, no matter what your ethnic background is. I think that's something that in that era when those shows started was conscious on their minds, that this is something we need to have. Like, we can't just have like a white family in a suburban home as a children's program. We have to show all of America, and we have to show these kids what all of America looks like. And that each one of the children that is watching this it understands that they're an important part of America, that they make up what this country is and what's great about this country.
I have nothing else to add to that. That's so eloquently and perfectly put.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That's great. And that's just such a great way of putting it. And now that I think back of it, I know that they did have, because I was saying before about were they topical, where it might not have been, because people tune out when it's that almost condescending way of telling
like,
you,
this is a message.
This is what you should be listening to, and why it's important. But they would use it as an opportunity. I remember there was one episode where a guy was in a wheelchair, and he was explaining to, because one of the monsters, because that was another diversity thing. Not only were the human characters very diverse, but they had all sorts of different characters that were of different, what are these meant to be, monsters and just green guys, and Ernie and Bert are orange and yellow. And, but he was just answering questions about, and I stick with those. I remember that episode because the guy said, I don't always want help.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I want to be able to do it myself.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the Americans with Disabilities Act, it was around the bicentennial. I want to say it was a 70s thing.
Okay.
Around that time,
I'll take your word for it.
Around because the whole idea of universal design and having ramps and elevators and access for everybody was, I think, it's about 50 years old now, and that was another kind of organ as a way to communicate it to kids, and you would see that in later times where differently abled people, look at the change in language right here, are part of society, and they get to have pursuit of happiness too, and shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and those public programmings did their job of presenting that to kids.
Yeah, and in a way that they can understand.
And not feel bad that to ask questions. If you don't know, ask a question, and how to politely ask a question.
Yeah, they were always really big on that about everything. Whether it was just like, are you lost? How to ask a grown up for help, and that sort of thing. Yeah, they were big on all that, asking questions, and like I remember how they had Linda, the deaf character, in Sesame Street as well.
That's right.
To just show some
she did the sign language, and they would have entire episodes where she would do the alphabet and spell words. And
and I think that a lot of us that grew up in that time or that were young at that time, it made an important influence on us.
And I just keep going back to that word recipe. They knew how to do it without us, because it's coming back to us now. We're like, oh yeah, I guess they weren't like hitting us with a tidal wave of stuff. It was, they just put it as part of the show, and it's a very entertaining show. I loved it. I look forward to watching it every chance I got.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's still around. It'd be nice if it's too bad that, just the economic situation now that Sesame Street has to be on HBO. Yeah. I mean, I know it's still to some degree on PBS, but, because that's going to cut access to a lot of kids. So hopefully we can get back to where that's a priority.
Right.
That things like Sesame Street and shows like it are something that we value.
I'm starting to see a turn. I'm a teacher, and so I know that in my world, the onslaught of digital media, there's been a major pushback in recent years, and to the more authentic. Like we're taking that turn, and I see in other parts of society too, where people are like, okay, enough of the apps, enough of the everything. I want to go back to. We don't have to go back to the Stone Age, but maybe we could go back to a time where things were a lot more authentic, and Sesame Street was authentic.
I mean, there's room for it too. It's not like anything has to go away. Just to bring back more something like a show like Sesame Street. When my kids were little, a lot of the PBS shows, and maybe it's still that way, were geared towards STEM education because,
that was the big thing.
That was the thing that kids need to know about STEM. And it got a little annoying for a while. It's like, wow, every show has to do with STEM. Isn't there anything that teaches things other than that? And, there were a few reading shows. But I think the shows, too, that we grew up with, that we Gen Xers grew up with, they weren't so specialized, like this is a show about math, or this is a show. They kind of incorporated a lot, as well as incorporating just what it's like to grow up to be a good person.
Right. So
I think that's one thing that we could use a little more of in children's programming is just what it's like to be a person in this country.
Yeah.
You're talking about, the values that this country was built on.
Right. And that's being social, being, getting off your screen and just chatting with somebody.
Right.
And, at a museum in Chicago. Not everybody gets this chance, but you did today.
Yeah, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate all of your insights. And
but I'm really proud to have been on the forefront of that era of children's programming.
It was a great time. We had it made in the shade when it came to that stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah. And Schoolhouse Rock, let's not forget about that too, because that's certainly one that stuck with a lot of people of my age as well.
Yeah, they always had a lesson about everything on that show.
Yeah, that one's a little more specialized, but
I mean, they were Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
In between episodes, they would.
That was adding education in with the stuff that's just pure entertainment.
Right, and consumerism and stuff like that.
So, but it's all part of like exploring the what's available or what children's programming can do.
Right.
It's like, hey, you know what? We can make these little 30-minute educational cartoons, stick them in Saturday morning. That's something we can do.
And that was that end of the 70s, early 80s was Nickelodeon's rise. And they had it perfectly. They did a good job then, especially where they said, all right, kids don't respond to these things, right? They had a list of they don't like preachy. They don't like seeing things that they can't ever possibly do themselves. They want to see themselves in some way on their programming. And so the Nickelodeon, as it evolved throughout the 80s, kind of, I think they tethered to some degree with what Sesame Street had achieved in the 70s and some of those programs, it was hard to distinguish between the two. Like it had the same kind of spirit on it. Obviously things took a turn in the 90s with Nickelodeon when they started making their own original programming and stuff. But early on, they were of that mindset of like kids need agency too. Like they need to have their own. And especially in that overlooked era, they kind of maybe took the next step. Sesame Street, preschool age mostly. Nickelodeon,
a little more sort of like older kids.
Yeah,
but
10, 11 years old. They don't always have, they're too young for MTV. They're too old for Sesame Street. So here's Nickelodeon, something in between.
Yeah. I think I think Zoom was a little bit like that. I feel like Zoom didn't last as long though. Like I feel like that was more of like a short-lived show. It came back again. There was like a 90s version of Zoom.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like one of the only things that could be for a kid who was maybe like 10. And, one thing that I think of is I remember when there was, like when Nickelodeon started, that there was talk about like Sesame Street being a little too slow paced. Like they wanted kids wanted shows that were a little bit more like video games, like really fast paced and edits, which I think is weird because when I look at, or even when I think about the original Sesame Street, it seems pretty fast-paced, if you ask me.
Maybe
and there
3
were some
minutes long.
pretty darn psychedelic things, like that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There was some just crazy,
very
wacky
artistic,
things, and so I'm not sure what they were talking about with that. Maybe I get that Mr. Rogers, that's pretty slow-paced and calm. But Sesame Street,
it's fantastic.
I feel like it would hold
way.
up. Yeah, like if you showed a kid, here's like the first season of Sesame Street, it would probably hold their attention. They're not going to be like, this is boring.
I loved how it moved from one thing and then it came back to the whatever the storyline was going on in the neighborhood, and then go back off in different stuff. And
and even an Electric Company too. It was pretty psychedelic just because coming out of the 60s and that sort of that aesthetic.
What's your favorite either moment on Sesame Street or reoccurring thing? Well,
there were always kind of the jokes that would appeal to the grown-ups. Well, just the humor of like the Jim Henson Muppets and their like the Ernie and Bert, like they're back and forth and stuff. Like I'm gonna eat cookies in my bed. Don't eat cookies in your bed. Okay, well I'm gonna eat cookies in your bed. That's one that I remember. And the guests that they had on there, like they had Stevie Wonder and Tito Puente and just
Johnny
that sort
Cash
of
on
thing.
there once.
Probably. Yeah. And then just from a nostalgic standpoint, there were those Joe Raposo, who was the music director. There were those little songs about the it's a long, hard climb, but I'm gonna get there, and the, little bit in the beginning, a little more later. Those are the ones that I watch them today and I just start crying.
Aww.
Just because they're so wholesome, and they're just so uplifting.
Brings you back.
So those are the ones, those are the things that I that I think about.
I always like Grover. Grover is my favorite.
Yeah.
And I loved when he was a waiter.
Oh,
And
yes. That guy. Yeah. Well,
flailing around and
Those cars are going. He's running back and forth like
Grover,
just go
he
to
did
the.
that too.
Yeah. Or they had a running bit with. I remember it was an animated film. I don't know if they did this with the Muppets too, but there was this running bit about a guy who's ordering a sweet roll, and the waitress is like, "We're out of sweet rolls." Or like he'll start out with, "I'd like coffee and a sweet roll." "We're out of sweet rolls." "Okay, then I'll have orange juice and a sweet roll." "We're out of sweet rolls." "All right, I'll have water and a sweet roll." And it just escalates until the waitress finally just goes ballistic, and he ends up with, "All right, then I'll just have a sweet roll." And so that's like one of the jokes that still sticks with me to this day.
They, I liked all of those. Follow That Bird was such a great movie.
Yes, I know. I saw that in high school. Right? I remember seeing that one on video with some of my high school friends.
I thought it was just, I saw it in the theater as a young kid, and I came back and I was so excited about it, and I watched it fairly recently. I'm like, it still holds up. And
well, we all liked
very
it.
Funny
we high school kids thought it was. We cried. We thought it was great.
And the Waylon Jennings is in it for no reason at all. And
Chevy Chase, he was in it.
Was he?
Yes, he had this bit where he said he was like the newscaster.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and he had that bit where he said, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day for a neighbor.
Because a couple of SCTV guys too. Speaking of Chicago, they had Joe Flaherty and Dave Thomas were the two bad guys that kidnapped the bird and. But I mean, great road trip movie, great chase stuff, and maybe because I love movies like that, where it's like, and I think it may have started with that one because and they just took all the Sesame Street characters and put them on the road, and like how would they react to all these different places?
And there's always something fun for the parents as well, like that. That's I don't know if that's the Jim Henson thing, but. Sesame Street always had jokes. They always had jokes that would make the parents laugh as well as the kids. When he was alive,
it was a lot more subtle. They, in more recent years, are very overt about it, and to my opinion, it's not as funny.
There's something that
when they do a skit that's Boardwalk Empire, but it's Birdwalk Empire. I'm like, okay, like you're doing it for the adults, not the kids are getting nothing out of this.
Right.
Whereas it was funnier when they just kind of like look at the camera and wink in their own way.
Yeah, there's something not quite. That's one thing that makes it a little hard to watch Sesame Street now, like the newer episodes, because they've got the same characters, but they're the different puppeteers, because all the original puppeteers have either passed away or they're just retired.
Yeah.
So they just sound ever so different. I mean, they're still great. They're still fun.
Yeah, Kermit,
but and even like Big Bird's got a different puppeteer, and so it's just a little bit different, but.
So I'm going to say this on the podcast. I'm going to say it to you right now. If you haven't already watched it, go to YouTube and look up a channel called Pogo. There's a Sesame Street one that is fantastic. So it's just a guy, he takes clips of movies and TV shows and makes music out of it.
Okay.
And it's the Sesame Street one. It's pretty great. It's like you'll get the best feeling in the world watching that. So watch Pogo, Sesame Street. Some of the Mrs. Doubtfire one's pretty good too. Okay. But that one in particular is great.
I'll take a look.
Mary Kay, thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me talk about this.
Yeah, this is just going wonderfully. I'm so glad that I did this today.
All right, well, it's been my pleasure.
Each podcast episode has us uncovering another piece of the mosaic that is the American experience through pop culture. It's what connects us across backgrounds and perspectives. These episodes are here to be enjoyed, but they're also built to spark learning in and out of the classroom. Visit everything-history.com to learn more. Be sure to like and share this episode and the podcast itself. You can follow Everything as a primary source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. I look forward to you joining me again next time on the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.